According to astronomers, 3i Atlas has all kinds of surprises. We're producing way more nickel than iron, and scientists don't really know why.
By the time most people checked their phones this morning, the sky had already changed. Not in color or clouds, but in the quiet arithmetic of orbits and objects, a new variable slipped into the equation. It began as the faintest smudge in a sea of data, noise, a hiccup, a speck an intern might dismiss. But it wasn't noise. It was the opening frame of a story that isn't supposed to happen. Two arrivals from opposite ends of the sky moving with purpose toward the one place we can't watch. A few weeks back, an astronomer flagged a dim traveler we now call Comet R2 Swan. Nothing scandalous there. Comets brush our awareness every year, but the narrative pivoted without warning. Before observers could finish plotting Swan's path, another object announced itself. Louder, stranger, heavier. A newcomer so vast it lit up backyard telescopes. So fast it triggered automated alerts across observatories. So wrong it was first logged as a sensor failure. The designation was bureaucratic, C/2025 R2, but no one calls it that anymore. In hallways and hushed calls, it earned a truer name, the Behemoth. Swan is not the headline, the Behemoth is. And the Behemoth is not coming alone. The first clues were basic: angular size, unexpected brightness, a motion that didn't seem to bow to the usual gravitational choreography. Then came the spectra, the chemical fingerprints we use to decode what light is telling us. Comets tend to read like dirty snowballs: water, ice, carbon compounds, porous rock. This one read like an engineering catalog: titanium, tungsten, a cobalt alloy in ratios that looked more like manufacturing choices than geology. Materials chosen when you expect heat, radiation, abrasion, when failure is not an option. And then there was the hum. Not the sun's charged particles, not a thermal glow, not instrument chatter. A low, repeating pulse that our deep space network registered like a slow heartbeat. If natural objects sing, they don't sing in patterns. This did. Weak, but structured. Regular enough to map. Familiar enough to unsettle. Even that wasn't the part that collapsed the room. Trajectory did. The Behemoth is not simply passing through the inner system. It is threading a path, thin, straight, deliberate, toward a rendezvous point that another object, the much-discussed 3i Atlas, is also racing to reach. Atlas has been a curiosity for months, an interstellar riddle with odd bursts of speed and an orbit too neat by half. People argued over it like a campfire ghost story. Now its role looks less like a mystery and more like a meeting time. Two objects from opposite hemispheres of the sky, Atlas approaching from Sagittarius, the Behemoth from Aquarius, arriving at the same sliver of space on nearly the same day. On paper, the odds are comic. In practice, they're telling us something we don't want to hear. This isn't coincidence. This is coordination. Plot the timelines, and a chilling convenience appears. Both objects are due to skim the inner system and swing nearest the sun within a 10-day window in October. Not just any window, the exact period when, from Earth's line of sight, they pass behind the sun. Solar conjunction. Our telescopes, ground-based and orbital, are blinded by glare. Even the great observatories, the ones we imagine as all-seeing, are forced to look away. It's the one place and time the cosmos offers a natural blackout curtain. If you wanted to meet in secret at the heart of a solar system, you would choose exactly this corridor. You would schedule it for precisely when we can't watch. No wonder the room went quiet. It's fashionable to say space is big. We say it so often we stop feeling the scale. But that scale matters here. The chances of two small objects from different star fields stumbling through our planetary neighborhood in the same year are already tiny. The chances of them converging on the same narrow lane of space within days while the star blocks our view, those odds sink to vanishing. Randomness does not behave like a Swiss watch. Someone, or something, set this clock. The Behemoth's raw size is the wrong kind of comfort. A coarse estimate puts it at more than 60 meters across, over 100 times Atlas by mass. Speedboat versus carrier. Debris-strewn snowball versus armored hull. One recoats in sunlight, the other seems to bleed power. One looks like nature, the other looks like intent. If this were only a tale of geometry and metal, perhaps we could label it unimportant, but the longer arc is older and stranger. When teams modeled the Behemoth's orbit backward and forward, the number that fell out rattled archaeological drawers. Roughly 22,500 years. That cycle lands its last close pass near the end of the last ice age, around the dawn of whatever it is we call civilization. People love their myths. They should. Stories outlive us and keep the codes we forget. In southeastern Turkey stands a stone labyrinth called Göbekli Tepe, older than agriculture, older than cities, older than the stories we know how to read. On one of its pillars, the so-called vulture stone, researchers have argued the carvings map a catastrophic sky. For years, such claims sounded like wishful thinking. But if a metallic titan looped through our skies 12,000 years ago, if a luminous tail roped the night from horizon to horizon, if the air hummed and the magnetosphere thrummed, well, then a memory like that would be carved into rock. We would call it God's because we lacked better words. We would pass it down as thunder and omen and teaching. We would forget the details and remember the fear. That 22 millennia circuit suggests this is not a first visit. It suggests routine, patrol audit, check-in, words we would not dare use if the evidence didn't lean toward purpose. An object built to endure radiation, abrasion, heat, and time. An energy field that answers with mirror images. A meeting scheduled for the 1 week the star blinds the witnesses. If fiction wrote this, we'd call it clever. If space writes it, we call it science fiction. But the data do not care what we call them. We did not take this lying down. Of course we didn't. Humanity is built to reach for switches and send messengers. According to whispers from a European control room, a probe, small, fast, sacrificial, was hurried onto a trajectory that would slash past the Behemoth's flank. They called it Icarus because names are prophecies. It carried particle sniffers, cameras that see in wavelengths our eyes cannot, shielding meant to shrug off sandblasting dust. It didn't get there. 1,000,000 miles shy of its mark, the signal tore. Engineers flagged a malfunction, then read the last packet, a glitchy smear that resolved frame by frame into a wrongness. Not a photo of the Behemoth, but a photo of Icarus itself, cold and sharp as a mirror. An echo snapped back at the exact angle the probe had been peering forward. For one heartbeat of telemetry, the universe reflected. Then the line went dead. Hitting an energy wall, one engineer called it later, off the record, voice small over a scrambled call. Not passive, responsive. In other words, not just large, not just armored, aware. What followed looked like a policy footnote from the outside and a lid from the inside. Public feeds stuttered, data portals began to redirect, requests for imagery returned, redacted pages, and boilerplate about solar safety protocols. None of that is surprising by itself. Space agencies shut eyes during conjunction to avoid frying sensors, but the timing landed like a message. We saw something we cannot explain, and if we can't explain it, we will stop showing it. Silence is also a kind of data. So are animals. Magnetometers began to record a tremor in the background noise of Earth's magnetic field, faint, periodic, coupled in a way no storm or sunspot could account for. Marine biologists logged whales drifting off migration lanes, turning where currents didn't turn. Bird flocks veered, revered, hesitated mid-sky as if a needle in a compass twitched. If a ship far offshore begins to drum, the beach will feel it before the harbor does. The planet is a beach, and something big is drumming. Put the pieces on the table and a picture takes shape that is difficult to call coincidence. The earlier interstellar visitor we nicknamed Oumuamua, flattened, mute, glimmering, starts to look like a scout. Atlas, smaller, twitchier, behaves like a courier, running errands, sampling, sprinting. The Behemoth is the parent body, the carrier, the thing you send when the job is serious and the date is circled in red. Together they read less like accidents and more like a system, observer, messenger, mothership, and the blackout rendezvous. That reads like a task scheduled on purpose, a procedure you don't want observed. What task? The tame answers come first. Data handoff, diagnostics, a refuel at perihelion. The sun is a filling station if you know how to drink. The Boulder hypothesis loops back to that long, cold orbital period. If a craft has swung through the inner system every 22,000 years, it could be revisiting a long project. A seismic needle left to tick, a biological program seeded and tended. The codes nested in our DNA, the rhythms of our magnetic field, the planetary resonances we chalk up to. That's just how Earth is. You can chart them one way and get luck, chart them another, and they look suspiciously curated. Ancient stories from Sumer and elsewhere speak of wise ones from the sky, engineers mistaken for deities, interventions dressed up as creation myths. Modern ears file that under fantasy, but modern ears are young, and youth is quick to scoff at grandparents' warnings. Even if none of that mythology holds water, the present tense facts already demand respect. A metallic body with power of its own is threading a path toward an appointment in the one place our instruments cannot pry. Another interstellar traveler is pacing it to the same narrow corridor. A third, more ordinary Comet Swan plays the part of background extra, useful to watch because it gives the public something comfortable to say aloud. Meanwhile, the quiet machinery of institutions, agencies, observatories, committees grinds into a familiar shape. Say nothing, minimize, wait it out. Maybe the star's glare will blind more than cameras, but we don't get to unknow what we already noticed. Once you see the pattern in the wallpaper, you can never again pretend it's just flowers. The pulse in the magnetometers, the muffled calendar reshuffling inside courtrooms of the sky, telescope time swapped, feeds delayed, announcements phrased like anesthesia. The whisper network of astronomers who live for hard numbers and now speak in metaphors because metaphors are safer than memos. So what exactly are we learning? Perhaps nothing more than this. We have been looking up like children peeking through the curtains, telling ourselves the street is empty because we can't see the corners. It turns out the corners are busy. It turns out schedules exist that do not include us. It turns out our star can be a stage light and a spotlight, and when needed, a blinding house lamp that comes up at the precise moment an act we are not invited to witness begins. If the Behemoth has been here before, our ancestors saw it and did what humans do. They told stories. We chiseled ours into stone. We will etch ours into servers. They called it omen. We call it signal. They gave offerings. We send probes. Different costumes, same urge, to name the thing that towers over us, to fold the incomprehensible into a narrative that makes the night feel smaller. There is one way this ends that feels comfortable. The blackout window passes, the objects slingshot onward, the hum fades, and our feeds come back with a shrug and a spreadsheet. We exhale and return to arguments we prefer, but comfort is not the same as truth. And even if the truth turns out to be simpler than the scariest theory, it will not be the truth we thought we lived in last month. The more disquieting ending is also the more honest. We have been noticed. Not this year, not last century, longer. We are not the first audience. We are the first with decent binoculars. Perhaps the Behemoth is not here to threaten or bless or even speak. Perhaps it is here to check a box on a timescale that makes empires look like sparks. And perhaps the only question that matters is not, are we alone, but for how long have we been on the list? If we are lucky, the coming days will give us data rather than rumors. They will give us frames rather than reflections, telemetry rather than silence. If we are less lucky, we will be left with only the shape of the absence, a rendezvous perfectly timed to the limits of our sight, an energy field that returns our gaze, and a memory that humans will carry forward as we always have, scratched into rock, written into code, whispered to children who grow up knowing the sky is not empty. Either way, a curtain is about to fall, and when it rises, the stage will not be the same.